The movie begins with Dr. Martin Harris and his wife Liz going on an official trip to Berlin to attend a biotechnology summit. That is their first time in Berlin, and they are both very excited about the summit. As they come outside to board their taxi, the driver comes to help them with their luggage. However, Martin's suitcase was left behind, and they drove off. Upon arrival at the hotel, Liz attempts to check in, but their suite is changed for security reasons. Meanwhile, Martin notices his missing suitcase, and without informing Liz, he heads back to the airport to search for it. Despite seeing him call a taxi and leave, Liz doesn't bother to ask about his destination. Unfortunately, Martin encounters traffic on his way to the airport and requests a quicker route from the driver. He tries to call Liz to inform her about his emergency journey, but he realizes there is no network coverage on his phone. A bikeman swipes at his taxi, and while the driver tries to evade the bike, the vehicle falls into the river. Martin hits his head, and the car starts sinking. The driver finds a way to break her window, and she leaves the car. She eventually saves Martin and brings him to land as the ambulance arrives to attend to him. Martin recalls some of his past memories, and the next moment he wakes up in the hospital. The doctor then tells him he has been in a coma for 4 days. He inquires about his wife, explaining he arrived in Berlin with her. However, they tell him that he had no identity card when he was found, and no one had come to find him, so they don't know anything about his wife. While still in the hospital, he sees news about the biotech summit and realizes he's supposed to be there. He meets with the doctor and asks to be released immediately, heading to the hotel. At the hotel, he inquires about his wife and their reserved suite. However, the receptionist insists on seeing his ID before granting access. He heads to the summit regardless. He asks the security to allow him into the meeting as he's one of the speakers, but the security refuses. He spots Dr. Bressler, calls for him but gets no response. He also sees Liz. He begs the security to let him meet her, but when he meets her, she completely denies him. She brings out another Dr. Martin and claims that he is her husband. Martin is in total disbelief at what she is saying and starts a commotion. The security then drags him away and he's taken to the CCTV room. Unconvinced, Martin struggles to defend himself, but the evidence contradicts his claims. The police arrive, prompting Martin to confess to memory loss from his accident and request to see Dr. Rodney. He enters a taxi but stops by the road. Depressed, he looks at Liz and the new Martin while he tries to call Rodney. He notices a strange man following him, and he runs underground, but the man still follows him. He enters the subway, escapes from the man, and brings out his diary to document his experience. He decides to find the taxi driver. He visits the taxi company, meets the manager, and learns that the driver fled due to being an undocumented immigrant without insurance for the accident. He meets her friend, Biko, who gives him the lady's new work address. He meets the taxi driver, Gina, and asks her where she picked him from. She refuses to answer him, so he leaves her. He visits Dr. Bressler's lab to find him. He sneaks into the lab to persuade Bressler that the Martin next to him is an imposter who stole his identity. He attempts to convince Bressler by referencing their recent conversation, but the other Martin is already aware of it. Bressler calls the police, but he is also confused as to why two people would know all the exact information. The new Martin shows his ID with a picture of him and Liz, further justifying himself. Disbelief, Martin faints and wakes up at the hospital, where his nurse gives him the card of a private investigator, Jurgen. Dr. Rodney then takes him to an MRI scan after the nurse sedates him. He wakes up again and sees the strange man, Smith, the same man who was following him in the subway. The nurse arrives and questions Smith, but he kills her and leaves. Martin struggles to take the scissors from the nurse to free himself and escape. Martin eventually visits Jurgen and asks for his help to prove his identity. Jurgen questions whether he knows his wife's motives for denying him or why the new Martin would impersonate him. Jurgen then suggests that he should go find Gina again to get more information. Martin tries to find Gina again, but this time he gives her his expensive watch so she can sell it to pay her debt. She agrees to help him and takes him home. Meanwhile, Jurgen calls a friend, Brand, to get his help. He browses about the summit and sees the prince, Shada, is also supposed to attend the event. He also learns that Shada has been the subject of several failed assassinations, raising questions about Martin's identity theft being connected. While Martin is bathing, Smith attacks Gina with another terrorist, Jones. Hearing the commotion outside, Martin quickly jumps through the window. While Jones tries to find him, Martin finds his way back into the house and sees that Smith is about to kill Gina. He hits Smith and fights against Smith, but soon gets overpowered. Gina then saves him by injecting Smith with his own lethal injection. They go out but see Beekles dead. They quickly take Beekles' car and drive off, while Jones chases them. After an intensive race, they eventually get into an accident, but they all survive. Martin and Gina run away and hide inside a noisy club. When they get to a safer location, she slaps him for getting his friend killed, blaming him for causing her trouble. Martin eventually decodes the series of numbers Liz has written, corresponding to several words in the book, which are the names of 2 plant species. Later, Marvin reveals to Jurgen about the close working relationship between Bressler and Shada. He says the prince sponsors the summit, while Bressler researches innovative crop cultivation to combat global hunger. Bressler shares research data with Shada, as Shada will need it when the country's oil runs out. Jurgen explains that Prince Shada has attracted a lot of hatred from the extremists of his country due to his progressiveness, and reminds Martin about a cocktail event happening this evening. He infers that the imposter Martin might be taking this chance to get close to Shada and assassinate him. Martin decides to follow Liz to an art exhibition and confronts her there. He pleads for the truth, but she insists they'd both be killed if she escapes. She directs him to retrieve his lost suitcase at the airport and wait for her there. With a final kiss, she departs. Meanwhile, Jurgen receives photo evidence of Martin and Liz at the airport as he returns home. Jurgen then receives a call from Rodney claiming to find out what happened to Martin. While Rodney arrives, Jurgen realizes Rodney works with the assassination group called Section 15. Jurgen poisons himself with cyanide and dies, so he won't reveal any information. Martin eventually retrieves his suitcase from the airport while waiting for Liz. Gina empathizes with him after looking at the photograph with his wife. She returns his watch to him and he pays her some money, and she leaves. Rodney then appears to greet Martin. Later, while waiting for the taxi, Gina notices Martin being kidnapped. Worried, she steals the taxi from the driver and follows Martin. At the hideout, Rodney reveals that Martin Harris is a cover name they had created to attend the summit. Therefore, Martin is not a real person. Martin and Liz are also part of the Section 15 group, but his memory got messed up after his accident, causing him to believe that the cover identity is real. It is also revealed that the imposter Martin is a replacement for his role because of his head injury. Rodney then orders Jones to kill Martin because he has ruined their plan. Gina then arrives and stops him while he fires his gun at her. She then drives her car forward, crushing Jones, and pushes Rodney down with his van. Both of them are killed in that instance. Martin then discovers his and Liz's true identity. It is revealed they are both Canadians named William and Rachel respectively. Later, Gina checks his passport and sees he visited Berlin 3 months ago. This makes him recall he had planted a bomb in Shada's room, and it is scheduled to go off this evening. Gina then advises that he can redeem himself by stopping it before it goes off. They sneak into the summit but soon get caught by the security. While Liz finds her way to Bressler's laptop, she unlocks it with the code on Martin's book, copies the file for the new corn, and switches the bomb on. Martin gets the attention of the security officers and tells them about the bomb, but they refuse to believe it. So he shows them the CCTV of his first visit to the hotel when he implanted the bomb. After confirming what Martin says is true, evacuation starts. Liz asks imposter Martin to kill the target while she disarms the bomb. Meanwhile, Martin figures out that Bressler's daughters' names, Lily and Laurel, are actually the common names of the 2 plant species in his books, and that they are Bressler's passwords. He realizes that Section 15's actual target is Bressler because they want to eliminate him after stealing the research of the new corn from him, worth billions of dollars. As for Prince Shada, Section 15 wants to fabricate the scene as though he is being killed by the extremists of his country, while Bressler is just coincidentally being killed on sight. Meanwhile, when the imposter Martin attempts to kill Bressler, Martin comes to stop him. As they continue to fight, Liz fails to stop the bomb and gets killed when it detonates in front of her. Martin then gets an instant flashback of what Section 15 was planning about. The two continue an intensive fight, and Martin eventually kills his imposter. The following day, the new corn is officially launched by Bressler and Shada in an effort to fight against the world's hunger. In the final scene, Martin leaves the country with Gina with the new identity of Henry and Claudia. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a like to help the channel out. Also leave a comment if you'd like us to recap your favorite movie. Thanks for watching.